Keanu Reeves was rushing through a crowded airport, trying to catch his flight, when he noticed a little girl standing all alone, clutching a worn teddy bear. With no frantic parent in sight, she looked scared and completely lost. In the middle of the bustling terminal, Keanu did something unexpected. He stopped. What happened next might just restore your faith in kindness. Where are you watching from? Share in the comments below, and be sure to hit subscribe for more inspiring stories like this. Welcome to Motivation for Success, the channel where we bring you uplifting stories and powerful lessons to inspire your everyday life. If you have a story that could motivate others, don't hesitate to share it with us. Let's dive in. It was a busy afternoon at Oakbridge International Airport, known for its sprawling corridors and constant flurry of passengers hurrying to catch their flights. Flight announcements echoed through the speakers, and rolling suitcases created a low, constant rumble on the polished floors. Amidst this everyday chaos, Keanu Reeves was making his way to a departure gate for a flight that would take him to the set of his next film project. Keanu, wearing a black suit, he had always been known for his humility and a desire to keep the spotlight strictly on his work. So he walked with his head slightly down, hoping to avoid creating any commotion. Yet even in those moments when his thoughts were focused on the challenges waiting for him on set, he remained alert to his surroundings. Suddenly, he noticed something unusual. Next to a row of chairs in the waiting area stood a small figure, motionless and overshadowed by the rushing crowds. It was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. She clutched an old, worn-out teddy bear tightly against her chest. Her eyes darted across the sea of faces, searching frantically. There was no adult near her, no frantic parent apparently searching for her. She simply stood there, looking lost and on the verge of tears. Would you stop to help if you noticed a child like this, or assume someone else would handle it? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments, because these are the moments that can change someone's life forever. Keanu, overcome with concern, slowed his pace. He glanced around for anyone who might appear to be the girl's guardian. But the crowd surged forward, oblivious to the child's plight. A wave of protectiveness coursed through him. He couldn't just walk on, not when a child was so clearly afraid. Keanu approached and knelt down beside her, lowering himself to her eye level. "Hey there," he said softly, a gentle smile touching his lips, "are you okay?" The girl glanced up at him. Her name, he would soon learn, was Jenna. She wore simple clothes that looked a bit scruffy, and her hair was slightly tangled from what must have been hours spent in the airport, searching for the familiar face of her mother. She barely spoke above a whisper. I can't find my mom," Jenna managed to say, her voice tight with fear. She clutched her teddy bear even closer, as if it were an anchor keeping her from drifting away in a sea of strangers. Keanu's heart twinged with empathy. He glanced at the overhead clocks and around the corridor, aware that time was ticking for his own flight. But something in Jenna's trembling voice kept him rooted to the spot. Many people walked by, their eyes glued to their phones or their boarding passes, never even noticing the distressed child. Keanu knew he couldn't just leave her there. "You must be worried," he said, softly placing a reassuring hand on Jenna's shoulder. "Let's see if we can find some help, okay?" She nodded, eyes brimming with tears. In that moment, any concern Keanu had about his schedule or flight seemed trivial. He led Jenna gently by the hand, scanning the airport terminal for someone official to speak to, an information desk, a security office, anything that could provide the little girl with a lifeline to her mother. Just as they started walking, a woman appeared from the crowd. She wore a sharp business suit, and her heels clicked decisively against the polished floor. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her expression was one of brisk efficiency. The woman's name, as Keanu would soon learn, was Ms. Sutton. Upon seeing Jenna, Ms. Sutton walked straight up to them, her voice clipped as she asked, "Is everything all right here?" Without waiting for a response, she placed a firm hand on Jenna's shoulder. She's fine, Miss Sutton said, her gaze flicking from Keanu to the child. I'm her guardian. I appreciate your concern, but I'll take it from here. Something in her tone made Keanu hesitate. Her words seemed polite, but the undercurrent was tense. He looked down at Jenna, expecting relief in the girl's eyes now that a supposed guardian had arrived. Instead, Jenna's expression hardened into an unmistakable look of fear. She gripped her teddy bear so tightly her knuckles went white. Keanu tilted his head slightly and asked, "Are you sure?" Jenna said she can't find her mother. Ms. Sutton forced a smile, but her eyes were cold. I'm responsible for her, she insisted, sliding her hand possessively onto Jenna's arm. No need to involve anyone else. A warning bell rang inside Keanu's mind. He had no basis yet for distrust beyond this subtle atmosphere of disquiet that hung around Ms. Sutton's words. But Jenna's body language screamed that she was not comfortable. Keanu had the distinct impression this wasn't as simple as a caretaker locating a lost child. Keanu made a deliberate effort to keep his voice calm. Maybe we should still let airport. Security know, he said, scanning the crowd for a sign of an official. They could help you both get reunited with her mother, or at least confirm that everything is okay. Ms. Sutton's eyes narrowed, and her grip on Jenna's arm tightened ever so slightly. Jenna let out a small whimper of protest. That's not necessary, Ms. Sutton replied, her voice clipped. I know exactly where her mother is. There's no reason to bother security. Keanu could feel his heart rate climb. He looked to Jenna for confirmation, but the little girl only trembled and clutched her bear closer. The intangible fear radiating from Jenna made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. Something was deeply wrong here. Every protective instinct he had screamed not to walk away. Just then, a uniformed security guard passed by. The guard's name tag read Officer Delgado. Spotting the tension in the group, Officer Delgado slowed down and approached them with caution. Is everything all right? The guard inquired. Keanu nodded politely in greeting. I'm trying to help this young girl, but there seems to be some confusion about who's looking after her, he explained. Jenna shrank back slightly at Ms. Sutton's side. Ms. Sutton's eyes flashed with annoyance. I'm her guardian, she stated again, but this time her tone carried a note of agitation. And we're fine. There's really no need for further involvement. Officer Delgado glanced down at Jenna, noticing the child's anxious eyes. Ma'am, the airport has strict protocols about lost children. If she's lost, we need to be certain she's safely returned to her actual guardian or parent. Ms. Sutton opened her mouth as though to protest again, but before she could continue, Officer Delgado signaled for backup on his radio. Keanu felt a small surge of relief. At least now there would be some official inquiry. If Ms. Sutton truly was looking after Jenna legitimately, then she'd have nothing to hide. But Keanu doubted that was the case, given the child's visible distress. The atmosphere grew heavier by the minute. Passers-by cast fleeting, curious glances as Officer Delgado spoke quietly into his radio. Ms. Sutton's composure began to crack, her polite facade gave way to a rigid stance and tightened jaw. Keanu positioned himself close to Jenna, who seemed to lean subtly in his direction, as though he were a shield protecting her from Ms. Sutton's imposing presence. Let's all stay calm, Officer Delgado said as another security guard, Officer Patel, arrived. We just want to make sure we verify everyone's identities and figure out how to help this little girl. Ms. Sutton forced another unconvincing smile. I already told you. I am responsible for her. We got separated from her mother briefly, and I'm supposed to take her to the boarding gate, she insisted. Yet she continued to avoid direct eye contact with Jenna. And Jenna, for her part, looked like she was trying to vanish into the floor. Keanu's mind whirled. He considered how dangerous it could be if Ms. Sutton was lying. Jenna was clearly terrified. A single mistake at this point could result in the child being whisked away. He cleared his throat. I think it would be best if we get official confirmation, maybe from the airline staff or from the mother directly, he said, carefully keeping his voice steady. Is there any way we can contact the mother? Ms. Sutton glared at him, frustration evident in her eyes. I don't see why this is any of your business, she snapped. You're not a police officer, and you're not the child's family. Officer Patel exchanged a look with Officer Delgado. It was obvious they both sensed Ms. Sutton's hostility. Ma'am, please step aside with us, Officer Delgado said, motioning away from the crowd. We'll see if we can contact the mother or confirm your story. Ms. Sutton tightened her grip on Jenna's arm. For an instant, Keanu thought the woman might try to run, dragging the child with her. He instinctively moved closer, placing a protective hand on Jenna's other shoulder. It's okay, he whispered to the trembling girl. We'll make sure you're safe. That small gesture seemed to inflame Ms. Sutton's anger. Let go of her, she demanded, her voice rising. The tension in the terminal was now palpable enough that some travelers stopped to watch. Officer Patel gently intervened, placing himself between Ms. Sutton and Keanu. Ma'am, we need to confirm what's happening here, Officer Patel repeated, his voice calm yet firm. This child appears very frightened. Either produce proof you're her guardian, or allow us to locate the actual parent or guardian. Ms. Sutton's eyes darted around, searching perhaps for an escape route. Finally, she hissed under her breath, she's trying to run away. Her tone suggested she was revealing some secret, as though that one piece of information would justify everything. Keanu's eyes narrowed. Run away from what? He asked. His voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable urgency behind it. He glanced at Jenna, whose tear-streaked face stared up at him with even more confusion. The child was clearly not running away, she had been standing still, lost and terrified, when he found her. Ms. Sutton shifted uncomfortably. Look, I just needed to take her somewhere, she muttered, half to herself. Then she trailed off, unwilling to explain further. That's not good enough, Officer Delgado interjected, his voice carrying a note of final authority. He motioned to Ms. Sutton. We'll discuss the details at the security station. For now, please release the child. Unable to maintain her composure any longer, Ms. Sutton let out a frustrated exclamation. But with two security guards now flanking her, she finally let go of Jenna's arm. The little girl scurried behind Keanu, pressing close to him as though he were a fortress protecting her from something monstrous. Moments later, two airport police officers, Officer Grant and Officer Munoz, arrived in response to the call for backup. They quickly took stock of the situation. Jenna was clearly terrified, Ms. Sutton was visibly on edge, and Keanu Reeves, recognized by many but treated respectfully by law enforcement, was shielding the young girl. Officer Grant addressed Ms. Sutton directly, Ma'am, we've had reports of a lost child. Could you explain your relationship to this girl and provide identification or evidence that you're responsible for her? The woman opened and closed her mouth several times, as though searching for a believable story. Keanu watched her, noting her increasing panic. She had come on so confidently at first, insisting she was Jenna's guardian, but now her mannerisms suggested she was improvising. Meanwhile, Jenna's breathing had grown faster. Her tiny hands still clutched her teddy bear in a grip that looked almost painful. Keanu stroked her back gently, hoping to reassure her. It's going to be all right, he murmured. Finally, Miss Sutton seemed to realize she had no plausible lie left to tell. She looked at the officers, then at Jenna, then at Keanu, before blurting out, I'm not her guardian. I was just trying to take her because her mother left her. I was doing what I thought was best. A hush fell over the immediate circle of onlookers. Jenna's eyes widened, and Keanu's mouth went dry at the realization of just how precarious the situation had been. Officer Munoz took a step forward. Then you are not authorized to be with this child. You have no legal responsibility for her whatsoever. Ms. Sutton shook her head but didn't answer. There was a tinge of desperation in her expression, and for a moment, it seemed she might fabricate another lie. But with 4 law enforcement personnel now circling her, there was little room left for manipulation. Officer Grant knelt down to Jenna's level, speaking gently. "Hi, sweetheart. Can you tell us your name and what happened?" he asked, giving the girl space to find her voice. Jenna took in a shaky breath. She seemed uncertain, her eyes flicking up to Keanu for reassurance. When she saw his calm, encouraging nod, she finally spoke, voice trembling. "My name is Jenna. I was with my mom, and we were going to catch a flight. We got separated. I turned around, and she was gone. I've been looking everywhere, and I got scared." The officers exchanged glances. Officer Delgado took notes, while Officer Patel asked a follow-up question. "Do you know your mom's name, or what she was wearing?" Jenna nodded. "Her name is Ms. Rivers, and she was wearing a blue jacket. She said we were going to visit my grandma. I tried to follow her, but there were so many people, and I got lost." Keanu felt his heart tighten at the raw simplicity of Jenna's story. She was just a little girl who had lost sight of her mother in a confusing, crowded place. For her, the minutes that passed must have felt like an eternity. And in that vulnerability, Miss Sutton had approached her with ulterior motives, though what precisely they were remained unclear. Officer Munoz's voice remained gentle but firm. "Don't worry, Jenna. We'll help you find your mom." While the officers escorted Ms. Sutton away for further questioning, Keanu stayed with Jenna near the security desk. The terminal buzzed around them, families rushing to board planes, business travelers making calls, announcements echoing overhead. Yet in that cluster of seats by the security station, it felt like time stood still. Jenna's ordeal had left her drained, and she clung to her teddy bear in silence, as though words might break the fragile calm that had descended. Finally, a flurry of movement turned heads toward the far end of the corridor. A woman in a blue jacket sprinted into view. Her hair was disheveled, her face flushed. The moment she spotted Jenna, her eyes lit up with both relief and anguished concern. She let out a cry that reverberated in the terminal. "Jenna! Oh my goodness, Jenna!" The woman, clearly Ms. Rivers, Jenna's mother, rushed forward, pushing past confused travelers. Her suitcase was forgotten behind her. She knelt down and scooped Jenna into a trembling embrace, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jenna momentarily froze at the suddenness of it all, but as soon as she registered her mother's voice and warmth, she burst into sobs. "Mommy! I looked for you everywhere." Watching them cling to each other, Keanu felt an overwhelming sense of relief. How many people had simply passed by Jenna, unaware of her fear? How easily could this reunion have ended in tragedy if Ms. Sutton had taken the child unchallenged? After several moments, Ms. Rivers looked up, spotting the officers and Keanu. She gently pried herself away from Jenna just enough to speak, though her arms never fully released their protective hold on her daughter. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you for keeping her safe. I was so afraid." Officer Grant offered a small smile. "We're just glad we found her in time." Then he nodded toward Keanu. "Mr. Reeves here made sure Jenna stayed with us instead of wandering off with the wrong person." Ms. Rivers' gaze shifted to Keanu. At first, there was pure gratitude in her eyes, followed by a flicker of recognition as she realized who he was. I can't thank you enough," she stammered. "You were the only one who noticed she needed help." Keanu shook his head modestly. "I'm just relieved that you two are together again," he replied. He took a quick breath, his own emotions swirling. The experience had left him slightly shaken, a reminder that real-world dangers could lurk in the most mundane settings. Take care of each other. Still holding Jenna, Ms. Rivers offered a tearful smile. We will. I promise. With the immediate crisis resolved, Officer Delgado informed Ms. Rivers that Ms. Sutton was being questioned. Airport authorities would need a formal statement from Ms. Rivers to clarify exactly what had happened. Ms. Rivers nodded earnestly. She had no intention of letting the incident go unreported or unexplained. As the small group dispersed, Keanu checked the time. His flight was already boarding. He had delayed long enough that he risked missing it, but in his heart, he knew it had been worthwhile. Before leaving, he knelt down one last time to Jenna's eye level. Hey, you okay? He asked, offering the girl a smile and a little wave. Jenna nodded shyly, hugging her teddy bear. Thank you, she whispered, her voice still a bit shaky. I thought nobody was going to help me. Keanu's throat felt tight. Sometimes it feels like that in a big place, he said softly. But there are good people around. Don't forget that, okay? She nodded, her eyes full of gratitude she couldn't yet put into words. Turning to Ms. Rivers, Keanu gave a slight bow of his head. I'm glad she's safe with you. I hope you both have a good trip, despite everything that happened. With that, he grabbed his carry-on and headed for the security checkpoint leading to his departure gate, heart pounding from the adrenaline and the emotional weight of the event. Finally seated on the plane, Keanu looked out the window as the aircraft lifted off. The city lights became a shimmering tapestry below, gradually diminishing as the plane ascended into the open sky. 1,000 thoughts filled his mind, but one stood out: how easy it would have been to overlook Jenna. Countless travelers had likely walked past her, preoccupied with their own schedules. How many times had he, himself, been that kind of traveler, heads down, mind racing about the next meeting or project? He couldn't shake the realization that sometimes, all it takes is a moment of empathy to change the course of someone's life. If he hadn't stopped, who knows where Jenna might have ended up? That thought haunted him. Yet it also fueled a quiet sense of resolve. Never again would he take for granted the small, everyday opportunities to do good. Sometimes, the simplest act, stopping to ask, "Are you okay?" could mean everything to someone in need. He realized that his fame or the fact he was Keanu Reeves had nothing to do with this. It was about being human, about caring in a moment when it would have been easier not to. A single decision can alter the entire trajectory of a person's life, especially a child's. In that sense, every one of us has the power to be extraordinary in small ways. Dear listeners, if you take away anything from this story, let it be this: kindness matters, and noticing the people around us matters even more. Big or small, your actions can have a tremendous ripple effect. Each of us crosses paths with countless strangers every day, whether at an airport, a grocery store, or even online. We never know what burdens they might be carrying or whether they need help at that exact moment. We hope that hearing about Keanu Reeves' decision to pause his busy schedule and help a lost, terrified child encourages you to look up from your own tasks now and then. To ask the simple questions: is someone near me in trouble? Can I do something to make this situation better? You might be surprised at the difference your small gesture can make. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed a similar situation where just a bit of empathy changed everything? Maybe you've been the one who needed help, or you stepped in to help someone else. Share your experiences in the comments below. Your stories might inspire someone to reach out the next time they see a person in need. Remember, this channel is all about spreading positivity and true acts of kindness. If this story moved you or made you think twice about how we treat one another, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Sharing this story could be a gentle nudge for someone else to keep an eye out for a person needing help. The overarching message is simple yet profound: every one of us has the power to be a small miracle in someone else's life. Even if you're not famous or think you don't have much to offer, a moment of your time, a comforting word, or a quick alert to the right authorities can shift fear into relief. That's what Keanu Reeves exemplified on that fateful day at Oakbridge International Airport. So, keep your hearts open and your eyes alert. You never know when you might be someone's last line of defense or their saving grace. And in the end, that's the kind of world most of us hope to live in, a place where we watch out for each other, even if only for a moment. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check out our other inspiring stories that showcase the impact of compassion in everyday life. Spread kindness wherever you go, and as always, stay tuned for more heartwarming tales on true acts of kindness. Until next time, remember, one small act can change everything. The only question is, will you be the one to take it?